Nia's sob broke against the concrete, just as Adrian stepped into the garage. The sound did not belong in that place. The garage beneath Adrian Varela's mansion was built like a vault. Black SUVs lined in perfect order, polished floors reflecting strips of white light, steel cabinets shut tight, the cold smell of oil and expensive rubber hanging in the air. It was a room designed for control. But Nia Brooks stood beside the far workbench with both hands pressed to her mouth, shoulders shaking, her eyes fixed on something in her palm, as if it had burned her. Adrian stopped mid-step. Nia was never careless with noise. In a house full of people who treated her silence like part of the furniture, she had learned to move softly, speak softly, hurt softly. So when a woman like that cried out loud, it meant pain had already crossed the line into terror. What happened? His voice cut across the room, low and precise. Nia flinched hard enough to drop what she was holding. A small silver charm hit the concrete and skidded under the glow of the overhead light. Adrian recognized it at once. It was a piece from Celeste Duval's bracelet, the custom one she wore to every dinner, as if wealth itself needed jewelry. Nia bent for it immediately, but Adrian reached it first. Her breathing turned shallow. "I didn't steal it," she said, and those were not the 3 words that would later end his engagement, but they were the first crack in the lie already building around her. Adrian looked at the charm in his hand, then at the red mark rising across Nia's cheekbone. Fresh, finger-shaped. The room went still. He had seen bruises before. He had caused someone a life he did not pretend was clean. But this was different. This mark was not part of war, business, or survival. It was petty power, the kind used by people who believe kindness could be slapped into obedience. "Who touched you?" he asked. Nia lowered her eyes. Not out of guilt, out of calculation. In houses ruled by money, truth could cost a woman her job faster than theft ever could. She was measuring the rent due next week, her younger brother's prescription back in Newark, the humiliation of being called a liar in front of 6 staff members and 4 Duval representatives upstairs preparing for the engagement dinner. "No one," she whispered. Adrian studied her for one long second, then noticed the half-open cabinet behind her. Inside, beneath a folded drop cloth, sat a velvet box he had never seen before. Nia followed his gaze, and panic flashed across her face too quickly to fake. That changed everything. She stepped in front of the cabinet. "Please," she said, "don't open that." This time, she was the one making the move that shifted the room. Not hiding from him, blocking him. Adrian's expression hardened, not with anger, but with focus. Whoever had put fear in her had tied it to whatever was in that box. And if Nia Brooks was protecting it instead of herself, then she was not the danger in this garage. "Step aside." She shook her head, tears bright and furious now. "If you open it, they'll say I did all of it. Not stole. Did. A smaller word. A worse one." Upstairs, muffled through the ceiling, crystal clinked and distant laughter rolled across the mansion. The engagement dinner was minutes from beginning. Celeste was greeting guests. Her family was inside his house. And down here, his maid was standing between him and evidence she was more afraid of being blamed for than being hit over. Adrian closed his fist around the silver charm. For the first time that night, he did not think like a host or a fiancé. He thought like the man people feared for surviving traps. "Look at me," he said. Nia did. "I decide what happens in this house." Then he moved past her, reached for the velvet box, and the silence that followed felt like the first inch before a blade goes in. Crystal caught the chandelier light as Adrian lifted the velvet box from the workbench, and every face in the garage seemed to lose color at once. Oil still stained the concrete from where Nia had been cornered minutes earlier. The silver charm sat inside Adrian's palm now, cold against his skin, no longer a trinket but evidence. The 6 household staff stood near the service door in rigid silence, eyes lowered, while the 5 men from Adrian's security team subtly spread out without needing orders twice. Across from them, the 4 Duval family representatives exchanged the kind of glances people use when they're deciding whether to lie or run. The air smelled like gasoline, perfume, and fear. Adrian opened the box. Inside, resting in black satin, was the missing diamond engagement ring. No one breathed. Celeste Duval had reported it stolen less than an hour earlier, loud enough for the accusation to stain the walls of the mansion. She had let suspicion fall where it would hurt most. On the maid. On the woman with no last defense except her word. But the ring had not been found in Nia's apron or locker or room. It had been hidden in the garage, beside the silver charm Nia had tried to protect, as if someone had arranged a scene and expected panic to finish the job. Adrian looked up slowly. His gaze did not land on Nia. It landed on Celeste Duval. Explain this. The sentence was quiet, but it cut deeper than a shout. Celeste Duval straightened, silk gleaming under the harsh overhead lights. Outrage arriving on cue. She said someone must have moved it. She said Nia was manipulative. She said the garage was full of staff traffic and anyone could have staged it. Her voice had polish, breeding practice, but her eyes kept flicking to the silver charm in Adrian's hand. And that was the mistake. She feared the charm more than the ring. That told Adrian where the truth was buried. If you can already feel the house turning against a lie, stay close because this was only the first crack in marble. Nia finally moved, not backward this time, but forward by half a step. Her shoulders still trembled, yet her eyes had steadied. Minutes earlier, she had cried like someone trying not to drown. Now, she looked like someone deciding whether silence was still worth the cost. Adrian noticed that shift. So did Celeste Duval. Don't, Celeste Duval snapped. A single word. Too fast. Too afraid. The room heard it. Adrian turned to Nia, and for the first time that night, he was not asking as a master of the house. He was giving space like a man who understood testimony could be sacred. Nia swallowed, fingers twisting once at her side, then opening flat, as if she were forcing herself not to hide. She dropped it, Nia said. The ring. Silence. In the garage. After everyone went inside, the chandelier's reflection trembled across the hood of a black sedan. Somewhere deeper in the mansion, music from the engagement party still drifted through the halls, faint and grotesque, as if another world existed 30 yards away. Here, in the white strip light and shadow, dignity was fighting for breath. Nia went on. She told me to pick it up. Then she saw my charm on the floor and stepped on my hand when I reached for it. Her voice thinned, but did not break. She said if I screamed, she would tell Adrian Varela I was stealing from her. Then she leaned down and said 3 words. Adrian's jaw hardened. Nia looked straight at Celeste Duval when she repeated them. Know your place. The sentence landed heavier than a gunshot. Everything changed in Adrian's face. Not because the words were dramatic, because they fit. They explained the missing ring, the planted blame, the panic around the charm, and the particular terror Nia had shown. A theft accusation could cost Nia her job. An assault charge from a powerful family could cost her freedom. Cold air clung to the narrow service corridor behind the main kitchen. With a polished glamour, the mansion gave way to exposed pipes, humming vents, and a strip of white light that made every shadow look guilty. The party still breathed on the other side of the walls. Muted laughter, crystal, piano, but here, truth sounded louder. A silver cart stood abandoned beside a linen closet. The floor still carried faint gray dust from the garage stairs on Nia Brooks's shoes. By the time the heavy door swung shut, Adrian Varela had already decided he was done letting other people speak for her. Tell me what happened. Nia flinched at the force in his voice, not because it was cruel, but because it left no room to hide. Her fingers tightened around the folded dish towel she had been carrying like armor. She looked toward the hall leading back to the ballroom, toward the world where Celeste Duval still wore a diamond and a smile as if both belonged to her by law. I already said enough. Adrian stepped closer, not touching her, not blocking her, but making it impossible to pretend this was small. Under the corridor light, the calm on his face had turned into something sharper than anger. It was focus. He had spent years reading fear in men who lied for a living. Nia's fear was different. It was the kind that came from telling the truth in a house where the truth could get buried. No, he said. You said the part that hurt. I want the part that proves it. The room went still. Nia swallowed hard. Her eyes dropped to the towel, then lifted again. Something had shifted between them since the garage. He had seen her humiliation in public. Now, he was offering her something more dangerous than protection. Belief. If I say it, she whispered, you can't unknow it. Adrian did not blink. Say it. A slow breath left her, thin and shaking. Celeste Duval sent me to the garage before dinner. She said one of the Duval family representatives had left a garment bag in the black SUV and wanted it brought in before guests noticed. Nia paused, hearing the memory before she could finish it. The slam of the trunk, the click of heels on concrete, the sudden silence when she turned. There was no garment bag. Adrian's jaw tightened. She followed me down with one of the Duval family representatives. They already had your ring. Nia's voice faltered, then steadied. Celeste Duval held it up and asked me if I had ever seen a stone worth more than my entire life. Then she dropped it beside the oil drain and told me to pick it up. Adrian froze mid-breath. Nia looked at him as if expecting the floor to open beneath her. When I reached for it, she took pictures. Said if I screamed, she'd tell everyone she caught me stealing. Said the security footage would only show me with the ring in my hand. Then Nia pressed her lips together. She kicked the charm under the tire and said she'd found proof I had been snooping in places I didn't belong. A hard silence settled between the pipes and painted cinder block. Adrian's voice came low. That's extortion. Nia nodded once. And false accusation. He stared at her, the pieces locking into place with brutal precision. The missing ring. The staged panic. The way Celeste Duval had been too prepared, too polished, too eager to let suspicion bloom before facts could breathe. This was no petty cruelty. This was rehearsal. Control. A trap built with family witnesses. Why didn't you tell me everything in the garage? For the first time, Nia's composure cracked completely. Because she said if I mentioned what was in the trunk, I'd be arrested before sunrise. Adrian leaned in, eyes narrowing. What was in the trunk? Nia went pale. Her throat worked, but no sound came. Fear returned to her face in a newer, deeper form. The kind reserved not for humiliation, but for consequences that could swallow a life whole. The silence after that question felt heavier than the concrete under their feet. A single fluorescent tube buzzed above the garage, throwing cold white light over the black sedan, the damp floor, and Nia Brooks's face as fear hollowed it from within. Adrian Varela had seen men lie to save money, power, blood, and reputation, but terror like this belonged to someone cornered by a truth too dangerous to hold alone. Before Nia could force the words out, the sharp click of heels entered the space like a blade drawn slow. Celeste Duval did not arrive flustered. She arrived prepared. A cream coat hung perfectly from her shoulders, untouched by the night air, and behind her came two of the household staff with lowered eyes, as if they had been summoned rather than invited. Celeste took one look at Nia's tear-streaked face, one look at Adrian standing too close to her, and something in her expression turned polished and lethal. So this is where loyalty goes to hide, Celeste said. Nia stepped back at once. Adrian did not. Celeste moved in without raising her voice, which made the cruelty land harder. She held up a velvet jewelry box in one hand, open and empty. I was willing to believe simple incompetence, she said, turning now so the household staff could hear every word. But theft is uglier, and seduction to cover it is even uglier. The accusation hit like a slap. Nia stared at the box, confusion first, then dread. I didn't take anything. Celeste gave a soft, disbelieving laugh. Of course not. That must be why you've been crying in private corners and whispering to my fiancé in garages. The room shrank around the words. One of the staff members looked at the floor. Another pressed trembling fingers against an apron seam. Public shame was a language everyone in that house understood. Adrian's jaw tightened. Enough. But Celeste was only beginning. She turned fully toward the witnesses she had gathered. A diamond bracelet is missing from my dressing room. Nia Brooks was the last one assigned there. And now, suddenly, she has stories, tears, and perfect timing. Her gaze slid back to Nia. Tell them how long you've been trying to manipulate sympathy. Nia swallowed hard. I cleaned your room. That's all. Search her quarters, Celeste said. No one moved. The command hung there, waiting for Adrian to protect order, image, and the woman he was supposed to marry. That was the performance everyone expected from him. Cold authority, easy judgment, one word, and Nia would be stripped of dignity in front of the same house that had already watched her endure too much. Instead, Adrian stepped between them. "No one searches anything," he said. The air changed. Celeste froze mid-breath. "You would defend a maid accused of stealing from me?" "I'm stopping a public execution dressed up as concern." For the first time, a crack showed in Celeste's control. "Be careful, Adrian. You are humiliating me in front of your own staff." His eyes stayed on hers, hard as cut glass. "You brought them here to humiliate her." Nia looked up then, stunned not by kindness, but by risk. This was no private warning in a hallway. This was open defiance, spoken where loyalty could be counted and remembered. Celeste shut the jewelry box with a sharp snap. "If she's innocent, let your security team search her bag." Adrian did not even glance away. "My security team answers to me. And until I say otherwise, Nia Brooks is not to be questioned, searched, or cornered by anyone in this house." The words landed harder than shouting. One of the household staff exhaled. Another looked at Nia with something that had not been there before, shock edged with hope. Celeste's face went pale, then cold again, colder than before, because now the insult had become public and undeniable. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly. Adrian's voice dropped with hers. "Then explain why she was threatened with arrest before sunrise." That stopped everything. Not outrage, not denial. Recognition. Recognition spread through the room like a crack racing across glass. The accusation Celeste Duvall had failed to answer did not merely stain an engagement dinner. It pointed towards something organized, practiced, and old enough to make silence look rehearsed. Adrian Varela did not raise his voice again. That was how the household staff knew the danger had changed. His anger, when cold, became method. The dining room emptied under his command in less than 2 minutes. The 6 members of the household staff were sent upstairs under guard, but not blame. The 4 Duvall family representatives were told to remain in the West Salon with no phones and no contact with the street. Adrian's security team of 5 moved through the mansion with disciplined speed, collecting devices, checking exits, sealing the motor court and the garage below it. Nia Brooks stood near the service archway, shoulders still tight from what had happened, watching him become something more dangerous than furious. "Bring me everything from the garage cameras," Adrian said. No one argued. The footage arrived on a tablet still warm from a guard's hands. Grainy black and white angles showed concrete pillars, polished hoods, fluorescent light, and Nia in the far frame just before dawn, one hand over her mouth, the other clutching a folded shipping manifest. Then Celeste Duvall entered with one of the Duvall family representatives behind her. No shouting could be heard, only movement. Celeste reached for the paper. Nia pulled back. The man stepped forward. Nia was cornered against Adrian's vintage Bentley. Then the frame cut to static for 47 seconds. Adrian froze mid-breath. That was not a social insult. That was tampering. He rewound, slowed the clip, and saw what Nia had seen before fear overtook her. A crest embossed on the manifest, identical to one on sealed guest trunks delivered earlier that week. Luxury transport paperwork. Private charter routing. Harmless on its face. But Adrian had spent half his life reading the lies hidden inside expensive systems, and one line on the page turned his silence into suspicion. Passenger count withheld under diplomatic exemption. Nia spoke softly, but her voice landed with more force than anyone else's that night. There were no passengers. His eyes lifted to hers. There were measurements, she said, weight ranges, sedation notes, and destination transfer codes. The room went still. Adrian did not question her intelligence. He questioned his own blindness. Within 20 minutes, he was in the lower office beneath the mansion, the one carved behind a steel door and paneled in dark walnut, where business records were separated from ceremony. Rain tapped the narrow, ground-level windows. City lights cut through the glass like knives. Across the desk sat ledgers, transport contracts, and donation records from shell companies tied to the Duvall family. He matched dates, routes, and payment structures against his own shipping network and felt something colder than betrayal settle into his bones. Celeste Duval's family was not using his name to gain prestige. They were preparing to use his infrastructure. Luxury vans, private aircraft, high-end marina transfers, routes designed for wealthy clients who were never searched, never delayed, never questioned. The engagement was not just a marriage alliance. It was a corridor. Once formalized, his organization would be welded to theirs by signatures, appearances, and shared logistics. If the scheme moved forward, human cargo could disappear inside polished leather and tinted glass, while his empire took the blame forever. He closed the final folder with controlled force. Above him, the mansion still glittered with chandeliers and old money. Below it, the truth had changed shape. Nia had not stumbled into jealous cruelty. She had crossed the edge of a trafficking operation and survived only because someone panicked before dawn. A guard stepped through the steel doorway, face tense. One of the Duval family representatives just tried to destroy a phone. Adrian rose, and for the first time that night, the question was no longer whether Celeste Duval had lied. It was how many people inside his house were already part of it. The broken phone lay on the marble console like a tooth knocked loose in a fight, its cracked screen still glowing under the chandelier light. One of the Duval family representatives stood between two guards from Adrian's security team, breathing hard, cufflinks crooked, expensive calm finally gone. In the silence around him, the mansion no longer felt like a home dressed for an engagement. It felt like a stage after the curtain had fallen, when the ropes and knives behind the scenery finally showed. Adrian did not raise his voice when he ordered the phone bagged and the man separated from the other three representatives. That quiet made everyone more afraid. Nia Brooks watched from the shadow of the service hallway, shoulders stiff beneath a borrowed black coat one of the household staff had found for her. The tear tracks on her face had dried, but the fear had changed shape. It was no longer the stunned fear of someone attacked in the dark. It was a sharper fear of someone beginning to understand that the darkness had been organized. "Keep her out of sight," Adrian said. The words were for his guards, but his eyes landed on Nia Brooks for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. Not cold, not soft, certain. It was the first protection that did not feel like pity. He moved fast after that. Two of Adrian's security team swept the guest wing. One stayed on the broken phone representative. Two more shut down the side gates and logged every vehicle still on the property. Adrian sent the 6 household staff back into visible routines. Kitchen lights on, trays moving, laundry carts rolling, so the house would appear unsettled but not alarmed. He wanted whoever was hiding inside the lie to believe the panic had not yet reached the center. Nia Brooks became the center. Inside a narrow linen room beside the rear corridor, she told Adrian what had bothered her before the garage attack, details too small for anyone else to notice. A delivery van had arrived 3 nights in a row without kitchen orders to justify it. The same garage bay had been emptied each time, then locked again from the inside. Celeste Duval had once snapped when Nia Brooks offered to clean muddy tire tracks near that bay. And earlier that evening, one of the Duval family representatives had whispered, "Move it before dawn," thinking no one carrying folded sheets would matter enough to hear. Adrian listened without interruption. The old arrogance of power would have dismissed a maid's memory as nervous confusion. Tonight, her memory was cleaner than every polished lie in his house. "Can you recognize the voice again?" he asked. Nia Brooks lifted her chin. Yes. That answer changed the room. The trap they built was quiet enough to pass for housekeeping. Adrian ordered a decoy transfer through the servants' corridor. 2 sealed garment boxes loaded onto a rolling rack, escorted in plain sight toward the garage entrance. The boxes were empty except for a tracker and a live audio transmitter. One of the household staff pushed the rack with trembling hands, not knowing the full truth, only that Adrian had promised no one would be left alone. Nia Brooks stayed hidden behind a vented pantry door with Adrian and one guard, watching grainy surveillance footage on a tablet turned low. The mansion became a battlefield of whispers. Footsteps, a door latch, then voices bleeding through the concrete walls near the garage. One belonged to the representative with the broken phone. The other made Nia Brooks go still as stone. Celeste Duval, not a jealous fiancée raging over appearances. Not a wounded woman protecting pride. Calm, efficient, angry only because a schedule had been disrupted. Through the audio feed came the words that stripped the glamour off everything. Inventory, driver, route payment. Human beings reduced to logistics inside a house preparing for a wedding. Adrian's jaw locked, but he did not move too soon. That restraint was its own violence. Nia Brooks touched the tablet screen and whispered, "There. That's the one from the garage." The red light on the tablet kept blinking like a wound that refused to close. In the security office off the West Hall, the air conditioner hummed too cold against the heat rising under Adrian Varela's skin. The footage had already done its damage. A driver's voice. A route. A payment. A woman treated like cargo in the same house where champagne had been chilled for a wedding toast. Nia Brooks stood beside the desk with both hands clasped tight enough to whiten her knuckles. And for the first time, Adrian understood that silence could rot a house faster than gunfire. He turned. "Bring Celeste Duval to the library." The order moved through Adrian's security team at once, clean and sharp, while the 6 household staff vanished from the hallway like they had learned long ago how to survive storms created by the powerful. The library doors shut with a deep wooden thud. Firelight flickered over rows of dark leather bindings, over crystal decanters untouched, over Celeste Duval standing in white silk that now looked less bridal than ceremonial. 2 of the 4 Duval family representatives waited outside under guard, and the other 2 had already begun demanding phones and explanations somewhere down the corridor. None of that entered the room. What entered was truth. Celeste lifted her chin first, not trembling, not ashamed, angry that control had slipped. "So now you want honesty." Adrian said nothing. He placed the tablet on the desk between them and let the paused image glow up into both their faces. Nia remained near the door, quiet, rigid, visible now in a way she had never been allowed to be. Celeste looked at the screen once and gave a tiny exhale that sounded almost bored. "You should have asked what this engagement was before you bought the ring." The sentence landed harder than the evidence. Her voice stayed smooth, polished by old money and older cruelty. "The marriage," she said, "had always been arithmetic. His ports, her family's shipping access. His enforcement, their political insulation. His name terrifying the streets. Her name disinfecting boardrooms. The dinners, the kisses, the public hand at his elbow. Those have been terms, not devotion." Adrian had not been chosen because he was loved. He had been chosen because he was useful. The room went still. Something cold passed through Adrian then, not rage yet, but humiliation with a spine. He had built an empire by recognizing leverage in every room, yet had walked blind into the one bargain meant to bind his life. Celeste watched him absorb it, and in her eyes was the final insult. She thought he would stay for the deal. "Love was never part of this," she said. "You knew that. What you hate is that your maid saw the cost before you did." Nia flinched as if the word itself had been thrown. Then, for the first time, she stepped forward by choice. "I didn't cry because I was scared for myself." Her voice was low, but it cut through silk, oak, and fire. She told him what the garage had done to her. Months ago, her younger brother had disappeared after taking short-haul driving work tied to one of the shell companies servicing the estate. She had searched hospitals, county lockups, shelters, everywhere a poor family gets sent when nobody important answers the phone. Then in the garage that night, she heard the same dispatcher code, the same route number, the same woman's laugh from a recording her brother had left in a voicemail before he vanished. That was why she broke. Not weakness, recognition. Every word reached deeper than the last, because this pain had not brushed Adrian's world from the outside. It had grown inside his walls, under his payroll, beneath the protection of his name. He froze mid-breath. Nia's eyes did not drop. "My brother disappeared through a door your house kept open." No one spoke for a full beat. Even Celeste looked startled now, as if she had expected tears but not testimony. Adrian understood then that this was no longer about a ruined engagement or a corrupt arrangement. Crystal chandeliers burned above the long dining table, throwing clean white light across silver cutlery, black crystal, and the polished faces of people who had arrived expecting a merger disguised as romance. The mansion's private dining room had been staged like a treaty signing. All 6 members of the household staff moved with trained silence along the walls. The 4 Duval family representatives sat near Celeste Duval in formal restraint, though their glances kept drifting toward Adrian Varela, reading his mood the way investors read a market before collapse. Near the doors, all 5 members of Adrian's security team stood still enough to seem carved from stone. No one noticed at first that there were no flowers in the center of the table. That absence became the first warning. Celeste Duval lifted her glass with a smile sharpened by strain, ready to reclaim the evening before gossip could catch up to it. Her engagement ring flashed under the chandelier as she began speaking about family loyalty, stability, and the future. The words were elegant. The room listened because money had taught it to listen. "Sit down," Adrian Varela said. Just 2 words. Cold. Final. The air changed at once. He remained standing at the head of the table, one hand resting on the back of his chair, the other holding a slim black folder. There was no toast in his posture, no warmth, no performance left. Only judgment. What had been planned as a public blessing now felt like a courtroom built from marble and gold. Nia Brooks stood near the service entrance with the rest of the staff, still in uniform, her face composed even as every eye in the room began turning toward the tension she had carried in silence. Then Adrian placed the folder on the table and opened it. Inside were printed security stills from the garage, time-stamped and enlarged. One showed Celeste entering the lower-level hours before she claimed to have been downtown. Another showed one of the household staff being intercepted by a Duval family representative near the utility corridor. Another showed a vehicle plate registered through a shell company now linked to the same route Nia Brooks's brother had vanished through. Beside the images sat audio transcripts, call logs, and a transfer receipt that should never have existed. The room went silent. A representative from the Duval side reached for the nearest page. Adrian pulled it away before the man could touch it. "No one edits this tonight." Celeste Duval let out a brittle laugh, too high, too quick. She said the papers proved nothing, that security images could be framed, that desperate people invent stories when they want attention. But panic had already entered her voice, and panic is louder than denial. Adrian did not look at her, while one member of his security team brought in a tablet and set it beside his plate. The video from the garage began to play. Grainy light, concrete pillars, Nia Brooks cornered beside a storage cage. Celeste Duval's voice, unmistakable now, low and vicious, ordering silence, threatening deportation lies, threatening jail, threatening that a maid with no power could disappear the same way her brother had disappeared if she kept asking questions. In the final seconds, one of the Duval family representatives appeared in frame, taking an envelope and nodding toward the side door used for unregistered deliveries. Celeste stood so fast her chair crashed backward. "This was handled," she snapped, and the sentence ruined her. Every face at the table changed. Handled. Not denied. Not misunderstood. Handled. One of the household staff began to cry quietly. A Duval family representative barked at Celeste to stop talking. Another demanded the tablet be shut off. Adrian's security team did not move. Adrian finally turned toward Celeste, and whatever hope had kept her spine straight began to leave her body. "You used my house," he said, each word precise enough to cut. "You used my name to bury a disappearance." Celeste's mouth trembled. For the first time, no one rushed to save her. Celeste Duval's lips parted, but the room had already abandoned her. The chandelier above the dining hall cast a pale gold sheen over crystal glasses, polished silver, and faces that had spent years mistaking influence for innocence. The tablet still glowed on the table, its frozen image reflecting across the marble like a stain that would not wipe clean. Near the archway, the 6 household staff stood shoulder to shoulder, silent and shaken, while the 4 Duval family representatives looked as if the air itself had turned against them. Adrian's security team, all 5 of them, remained exactly where they were, hands folded, eyes forward, loyal not to comfort, but to command. And at the center of it all stood Nia Brooks, no longer bent by shame, no longer trying to disappear. Celeste Duval finally found her voice. "It was handled," she whispered. Nia Brooks did not flinch. That was the difference now. Earlier, tears had been hiding in the garage beside oil stains, concrete dust, and the cold smell of gasoline. Earlier, 3 words had come from Nia Brooks in a voice so broken it barely sounded human. She took him. Those 3 words had split open a lie dressed as elegance. They had not only pointed to cruelty, they had revealed a woman willing to make another woman vanish to protect a wedding, a reputation, and a seat at Adrian Varela's table. Now the truth stood in full light. Adrian Varela stepped closer to Celeste Duval, and even before he spoke, the room seemed to tighten around him. He was not loud. He did not need to be. Men like him had spent a lifetime learning that the coldest verdict was often delivered in the calmest tone. "You called a terrified woman a problem," he said. "You turned my home into cover for a crime. And you expected me to marry you after that." Celeste Duval's breath caught. One of the Duval family representatives tried to step forward, but Adrian only lifted a hand once. The man stopped as if he had met a wall. Then Adrian looked to his security team. "Escort Celeste Duval and the 4 Duval family representatives out of this house. Collect every access card, every key, every device connected to my property. The partnership is over. The engagement is over. If they interfere with the evidence, law enforcement gets everything tonight." The words landed one by one, clean and irreversible. Celeste Duval stared at him as if she had never truly seen him before. Not the power, not the danger, not the line he would draw once he recognized what had been done under his roof. "You're choosing her?" she asked, almost choking on the insult of it. Adrian turned fully toward Nia Brooks before he answered. "I'm choosing what is right." The room went silent. No one mistook the meaning. This was not romance rescuing misery. This was conscience finally outranking convenience. This was a man with enough power to bury the truth deciding, instead to kneel before it. As Adrian's security team moved, Celeste Duval's composure collapsed. She was led past the staff she had ignored, past the woman she had tried to erase, past the life she thought money could secure. The front doors opened. Heels clicked across stone. Then the doors shut behind her with a final, echoing thud. Only then did Adrian face Nia Brooks again. His voice changed. Not softer from weakness. Softer from shame. "I should have seen it sooner." Nia Brooks held his gaze, her eyes still wet but steady now. "You saw it when it mattered." For a long second, neither of them moved. Then Adrian reached to the table, took the ring he had removed earlier, and set it down beside the glowing tablet like a piece of metal stripped of all illusion. "To everyone in this house," he said, turning so the 6 household staff could hear him clearly, "what happened to Nia Brooks will never happen here again. Her position is protected. Her pay is doubled effective tonight.